Inoki has been kind enough to let me teach you guys today, which is one of my requirements for my special methods class. I get to be videotaped and then reviewed in that class. What I'm going to cover today is labor history in this country, which ties in well because we were talking about the New Deal and FDR, the Great Depression. I'm going to give us an overview of the history of labor in this country leading up to a strike in Minneapolis in 1934, which is considered a major turning point in this country in labor history. I'm going to lecture for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have some open discussions with some questions I would like to talk about. I also have this paper that I'm going to pass out. If you would please fill it out. The information, I will cover all of it through my lecture. This just shows me if I was able to teach what I wanted to teach you guys today. And I also had donuts for everybody afterwards.
Yeah!
Nice pride. You do it beforehand.
I'm talking about.
And you don't have to put your last name on the name section. I'd have to black it out anyway. Okay, so in the early 1600s, when people are first coming over to the New World, what you have are indentured servants that make up the majority of what's the working class. There was slavery at this point, but it just wasn't, it hadn't exploded yet in this country. They did try to enslave and force labor upon the Native Americans, but due to their rapid decline in numbers because of disease and resistance, that didn't seem profitable enough to the colonists who were coming over here. I have a visual aid that's going to go while I'm discussing these topics, hopefully. Probably. So I'm showing this image here because in 1640, something pretty interesting happened in this country. And this is the case of John Punch. And he was an indentured servant. And him and a Dutch indentured servant and a Scottish indentured servant all ran away from their owner. Indentured servants, they serve a certain amount of time to their master or owner, and then they're released from their contract, so to say. Well, it was still tough work and a hard life, and so they escaped. They get caught a little while later. They are put on trial. Well, the Dutch and the Scottish indentured servants were given an additional 3 years of their term. Well, John Punch was given a life sentence. There was nothing different about him other than he was African descent and the other two were European descent. This is the first legal action in this country to cause, based on racial divide, and it was made in a sense because the landowners at that time recognized that it was in their best interest to cause a racial divide amongst similar economic statured people. Because if all of the indentured servants at the time who had common economic status rose up against the few landowners, then they would have a major issue on their hand. So they make this racial divide instead of people being able to unite based on their economic status, which is common in other parts of the world. In 1739, you have the Stono Rebellion. This is the first major uprising by slaves in this country 20 of them started out. 20 of them raid a ammunitions warehouse, kill the owners there, and they're marching down to Florida, which was Spanish Florida at the time, and there was a fort there that was occupied by African slaves. Well, they gathered in numbers. They gained in numbers. I wish I had a pause button here. They gained in numbers on their way and did kill others along the way. Federal troops were formed to hunt them down and kill them. They did hunt them down. They did capture them, and they decapitated their heads and placed their decapitated heads along the path that they had taken from the Stono River towards Florida. So you don't have a lot of insurrections in this country's history other than this and a few others because swift military force was used. Also, it was common that slaves would give up information to their owners about insurrections that might happen because they were treated more leniently if they did give that information. So you don't have a lot of strength in numbers like you would need. The Deep South, of course, becomes slave labor is the number one economic means, or it's their essential component to their profits. Some counties in South Carolina have over 85% slaves living there. So you have 1% of the population controlling over 85% of the population. That was what they found most profitable, and they were intent on keeping it that way in the South. This is a cartoon depiction from Harper's Weekly, pre-Civil War. What you see here is Southern person on cotton, Northern on corn, slave in the background. Their relations were not great at that time. In fact, if you think back to the framing of the Constitution, there was a debate if they should end slavery right then. There was also Abigail Adams pleading with John Adams to make sure women's rights got included into the Constitution, neither of which happened. By 1820, the North pretty much abolishes slavery, but you're still in a country where slavery is producing the bulk of the economic capital, so their hands weren't that clean, really. You see, they've exchanged their products. They're happier now. Weapons are down. This is the way the country was at the time. It was about the profits that could be gained, and that's why you can look at slave labor as the goose that laid the golden egg in this country. We had gone from when the Europeans first came over, they are leaving a feudal society where you have large landowners and serfs working the land. They moved to economic philosophy called mercantilism, which is that there's a fixed amount of wealth out there, and so you need to go take it. So that's kind of their basis on why slave labor was okay. They needed to make as many profits as they could. They didn't look at other individuals who were non-Christian as having the same rights. And if you were not a landowner, you had no rights either.